When you're born to sick people who can't care for you properly or protect you from harm, and when their behavior brings attack and shame on the family, it is only natural for you to believe as a child, not necessarily that you're to blame for their behavior, some kids will think that, but you might believe that the shame that hangs over the family that's directed at the adults is yours too. And people are cruel and careless that way. They blame the kids, and outsiders who should know better judge the kids. They allow bullying to be directed at the kids. But of course, the children are innocent. And that shame that the kids are drowning in eventually gets the better of them. It gets inside. I had that, and maybe you've had that too. And I'm telling you, you can make a lot of progress on healing your trauma, but that shame can be very hard to reach. And it has a way of attracting more hardship in this weird way. It drives you towards self-defeating behaviors, and it can make you a bully magnet. And you think, I swore I'd never make this mistake again. I don't want people to judge me, but here I am doing it again. Now everybody's gonna come after me again. Why am I doing this? It runs so deep because it got in there before you had words or any kind of reference point to know that you're innocent. And that bad feeling of being ashamed of your parents, it was a correct feeling to feel ashamed of them, but it wasn't your shame. It's a sludgy, sticky poison like an oil spill that got into you. When you're kind of vibing at that energy, people sense it in you and you internalize it. You internalize it because of what happened, because of the way people react to you, and it starts to be this vicious circle. But you can heal. You can become your real self. And I want to talk about that today. I got a letter recently from someone I'll call Jennifer, and she writes, "Dear Anna, I listen to you every day to try to chip away at this big boulder that I'm carrying with me. I'm seeing a therapist on and off, but this is costly, and I'm saving so that my kids and I can move, so doing a lot of work on my own. If you could please offer your perspective, here goes." All right. I've got the fairy pencil ready to circle things. I'm going to read all the way through, then I'll come back and we'll talk about things that I circled. All right, Jennifer says, "I was born from an affair. My father was married to someone else, and my mom was divorced from an abusive relationship. There was always alcohol involved when they were together and lots of secrecy, but everybody knew about it, and it was almost like there was an agreement that I didn't know about, that it has to be hidden in plain sight and people should just pretend there's nothing wrong with it." I know those agreements. Insert lots of confusion, Jennifer says. "My dad's wife would come around to our house and throw bricks and stones at our windows and call my mother a whore." Wow. "One time, everybody ran in and left me outside while my dad's wife and a gang of women threw rocks and abuse at our house. Eventually, they let me in. I used to dance and be involved in arts and culture at our school, but I was often so embarrassed or ashamed. Because both my parents would come there drunk. I was bullied too for being different and for pretending I was the bee's knees. I wish I knew what it is that I did to deserve to be bullied for having drunk parents born out of wedlock or shame brought on me and my family. My mother would become a monster when she drank, often telling me no one liked me, I'm a slut, and that she's going to put me in a home. Good God. My bags were often packed. I prayed to God to help me. At 5 or 6, I was molested by my day mother's son. I didn't know that phrase, day mother, and I looked it up, and it's a home daycare. It's the woman who runs a home daycare. Her son abused you. Okay. Fast forward a few years, at the age of 11, my dad died. I never knew he died or that he was buried. I heard 2 weeks later. Wow. I stopped the dance class, but the bullying continued. I started developing and dressing up. My mother would often just give me the evil eye. Boys were taking interest, and there was one particular older guy that looked like he could rescue me. He took advantage of me sexually, and I lost my virginity. I never saw him again. High school, more bullying. At age 15, I fell pregnant and had my daughter at 16. My life has just been a mess. 11 years ago, I had my son, the best experience of my life. My daughter and I had moved in with my boyfriend, and we were supposed to get married. When I was pregnant, I took such great care of my body. I was conscious of making good decisions for the baby I was carrying. I wanted to give him the best possible start. But things started changing. I developed a colon issue. Both my brothers-in-law died within a year of each other. I told my boyfriend at the time that I needed more from him and that he has to try to limit the drinking since I didn't want my kids to be around that anymore. There it is. He told me he couldn't give me what I want, and that's what started the ball rolling and us separating. We sold everything and went our separate ways amongst fights in court, custody, maintenance, and threats. There's so much more to the story, but I'm afraid I might trigger people too much. Darling. I lost everything. I had to move back home and have been trying for 7 years to get back on my feet. My throat closes every time I want to put myself first. I'm not living. There are days I can't move and there are loops playing over and over in my head about how useless I am and that I should never have left my ex. I feel like I'm in a self-constructed courtroom where a part of me has decided that I deserve to be punished for all the harm I've caused. I'm on antidepressants, trying to eat healthy and function as a parent and woman. I'm failing miserably, just ask my ex. My job doesn't bring me joy either, so it's like there's no respite. There's a part of me that I've encountered that doesn't believe I'm broken, yet the powerful bullying aspect of me insists that I need to heal because I'm broken. How do I resolve this? My life depends on it, and so do my kids' lives. I want to do this for them and for me, and I'm sure they're tired of seeing their mother beaten down. I am too. I appreciate your assistance, guidance, and support, Jennifer. All right. You are my kind of woman, Jennifer. I relate to you a lot, and I believe in you. And the very first thing I want to say is, all the harm you've caused, you didn't tell me about any harm. You didn't tell me anything. And, you know, I think that the fact that you're eating healthy and trying to be a good mom and reaching out for help and watching YouTube to try to find out how to heal is all the right things. Let's see if we can find the next steps for you to take it another level. You're doing great. What you went through is so unimaginably horrible. I get it. I've been shamed before. I was ashamed of stuff that happened in my childhood, but I don't think it, it didn't come to actual stoning, and I just think it's so interesting. I don't know if you know this, but there was a woman in the Bible who is stoned for adultery. That is what they were doing to your mom. It was a death penalty, right? It's somebody is irredeemable when they've done that. In the Bible, it turns out differently because mercy arrives and the world is introduced to a new way of looking at people who have made mistakes. Now, it's hard for me to have sympathy for your mom right now, but she was an alcoholic, and I know what that's like. I had an alcoholic mom too, and alcoholics say things. Alcoholics have their emotional development, the maturity needed to raise a kid, and have a filter on when they're feeling overwhelmed or exhausted with parenting and all the responsibilities and probably this crap job that she had, I'm guessing, that it was all very hard, and she had no filter, and she blamed you, and it's terrible. I'm not trying to excuse it. But I just see how all of this works. Everyone in this story is merciless, and now you are merciless to yourself. You were born from an affair. Actually, your mom and your biological father may have been having an affair, but you were born from pure goodness. You are real. You're a human being exactly like all human beings. You are not marked by their behavior, okay? I just want to make that so clear. I want you to have mercy on yourself. You are a full, beautiful flower, lotus of a human being, exactly like you should be. Nothing about what they did actually infects who you are. All right. There was alcohol involved when they were together, so they hung out. They had this secret relationship. I had a family with a secret dynamic in there. People in my family were selling drugs in the house. And I was one of two people, maybe three, who didn't realize what was going on, who was just always, it was so crazy making. It's what's going on? Why are these people in the house? What's this weird secret language? Why does everybody itch so bad? And it was crazy making, and it took me years to kind of realize what was going on. Is there was heavy drug use, there was drug dealing, there was a lot of denial about it by those of us who weren't involved in it. And it was kept secret from those of us who weren't involved because they knew that we would disapprove. And people who are in the middle of their addiction do not want to be messed with. They don't want the interference. And so, they will basically go to any lengths, including just be completely destructive to people's faith and trust in them, to the safety of the kids, to keep going. And it's sad, but it is part of the disease of addiction. And it's interesting, it's dawning on me. I get all these letters. I get a lot of letters, way more than I can actually read. And so many of them involve an alcoholic parent. And I had an alcoholic parent. I had two, actually. I knew it was bad, but as I start to feel the relatedness to my brothers and sisters out here, to you, my sister, you help me realize, it's not my fault either. It's not my fault either. And as much as I know intellectually, I didn't do that, the things that happen in my home, that it didn't affect me. I've done all the practical work that I've done so far in my life, and I carry on, I keep doing it. I do my daily practice every day. I hope you know about that. I'll talk about this in this video. But I daily just sit there working to shed the fearful and resentful thoughts and beliefs and reactions to things. Not so that I can have nothing in my mind, but so that I can have clear thinking come back in and inform me so that I can take strong actions, so that I can be lucid, so that I can stop being driven by confusion about if everybody's bullying and shaming me, and I had that happen as an adult. When that's happening, it's pretty hard to stay clear, do I deserve this? And I'll give you a short answer. On some level, I had really messed up. I had made a mistake. I'm not going to go into it in this video, but I'll just say I made a big moral mistake. People were shaming me. That was pretty much their bad moral behavior. I sorted out my problem. It was never healed between all of us, and I just got away from those people. But people can be cruel like that. This thing, so what really hurts me in your story, they threw bricks and stones at your windows. They called your mom a whore. One time they ran in and left you outside, and there it is. That's the great abandonment. That is just so alcoholic. That's active alcoholism at work, just forget the kid. Finally, they let you in. You must have been terrified. I can see how their bad thing got in you. I'm so sorry that happened to you. That never should have happened. You have kids now. I have kids. We never would have left our kids outside, would we? No. So good for you. You've healed. And when you say that just to ask your kid's dad how you're doing a terrible job, I'm guessing that means that you're having a hard time keeping their environment stable, positive, structured, nutritious, all that stuff, being a good mom. I found that hard too. And I found something I've been thinking about lately is how scary it is when you're around people who are highly functional and you're struggling, how you end up avoiding those people because of fear of their judgment. And I think that if anything, well, I don't know, bullying is a funny thing. Once a kid has been bullied by their parents or even just by kids at school, there's some weird injury that happens to your vibe that people continue to bully you. You become a bully magnet. And I can't totally explain why that happens, but one of the reasons is because of that avoidance. You don't seek out the decent people. And if anybody who has no friends and who's isolated at school, and that's what it sounded like, I'm so glad you found the dance and everything, at least until your dad died when you were 11. So you had these pursuits that gave you joy, and those give you resilience. They helped you survive getting sexually assaulted as a kid, but you gave it up, and that's what we do. We avoid the nice people. It just becomes it feels too different. That's my opinion. I'm exploring this more. I'll do a video about it soon, that avoidance of the people who have it together. Somebody sent me a message about this today, just a one-on-one message on Instagram, who just said they had had a breakthrough, that this is what it is. And I'm like, gosh, it is just like that. That is what it is. And the question becomes, when you have been avoiding people who have it together, it's well, what am I avoiding? This acquaintance who wrote to me today had said, well, the parents do it. The parents avoid decent people to be in the family's life because they need to be around people who aren't going to judge their shitty parenting. And I think that's true. But I could also say that I think to some degree I've done the same thing in my life, not just as a parent, but also especially when I was in high school. And I just kind of sought out the people who were drug addicts. Even though I wasn't a drug addict, it was safer for me to be with people who couldn't be on some kind of high horse with my failures or my perceived failures. Because I actually, I'm telling you, as a kid, and I think you were too, I was a good kid. I was a good kid. I was just carrying a lot of shame. I totally understand that. You couldn't really bring friends home because it was too weird. It was just too weird. And so this thing where they bullied you for being different and for pretending you were the bee's knees, I don't know what you mean by different, but I do know kids do bully the crap out of people who are perceived as different. And if you are kind of isolated from other kids, you end up you find a way to use your imagination or your creativity, which you did through dance. I was really into books, and then I was really into, I would act things out in our little aluminum shed in the backyard. I created a little school, and the neighborhood little kids would come to my school, and I would pretend I was like Laura Ingalls Wilder teaching school. My fantasies were great, but I had to play with kids younger than me because I couldn't really deal with kids my own age. And I perceived that they didn't want to be friends with me. But looking back and actually knowing some of them now, I'm like, I think that I was protecting myself and pulling away. You can ask yourself if that was part of it. It makes sense. It makes sense. But perhaps there's more of an opening with other people than you realize. That's all I'm trying to give you is yeah, part of that was not necessarily, it wasn't that everybody hated you. It sounds like there were some terrible people. They called you a slut. Yes, I had that too. And then your mom, it was your mom. No, I didn't have that. Your mom would become a monster when she drank, often telling you no one likes you, you're a slut, and that she's going to put you in a home. You know, it's so weird. So I write my fears and resentments every day. Those would be my fears if I had been writing them at the time. But it really happened to you, sweetheart. That is just so wrong. No mom should do that. I'm amazed. Here you are. You're momming now. You got this, all right? You are not her. And her behavior is just terrible. She really put a big project on you to try to survive that. And then to recover yourself one day. But you can, okay? You can recover yourself. Your real self is intact in there. And you can come back. You can come back out, all right? It's going to be a project. But it's a happy project. And I'm really happy that you wrote. Okay. All right, so you prayed to God to help. All right. At 5 or 6, you were molested by the son of the day mother. Very vulnerable age. It happened to a lot of us, I'm afraid. It's hard, yeah. Fast forward a few years, at the age of 11, your dad died. And that's a very, your dad sounds like a schmuck. And he didn't take care of you, and they didn't even tell you that he died. So I guess you weren't important to him, or nobody else perceived that you were. I don't know. That's so wrong. So it sounds like your mom, yeah, he was the only father figure in your life, right? But he was just somebody who got drunk and attracted bricks to the house. And people didn't see you as a real person who lost her dad. You didn't have that reality. And you did lose your dad. You lost your dad well before he died, through his alcoholism, through his indifference, through his, dishonest life, through his involving your mom in trouble that caused all this damage for you. No good dad does that, all right? Not a good dad. So he died and you didn't know. It's who cares about her, right? You stopped dancing and the bullying. And it's interesting you phrase that, I stopped dancing, but the bullying continued. So was that what was different about you, was that you danced? Were you too creative, too lovely, too genuine? Dumb kids. Kids can be so mean. You started developing and dressing up, and your mother would often just give you the evil eye, and boys were taking an interest, and there was one particular older guy. Of course, I hope you're not ashamed. This is when a kid is not parented. I've heard, I'd like to see this validated, I've heard that girls who don't grow up with their biological dad around will go into puberty earlier, sometimes as much as 2 years earlier than a girl who grows up in the physical presence of his dad. So people out there, you can check this for me. I would like to see more research about it. But I get it. It sounds like a biological adaptation so that a girl, maybe from, hundreds, tens of thousands of years ago, it's an adaptation so that a girl can get cared for, married off young. You go into puberty early. Early puberty without the psychological maturity is a locus of all kinds of hell. They're not supposed to be so close together. And 130 years ago, it wasn't. I think the average age of a woman's first period was 17. And now it's more like 11 and sometimes much younger. And, there's just been a lot of talk, why is it so much younger? And it may be to do with a lot of things, but one of the reasons might be not having that physical presence of your dad. Your body knows who your dad is. Your body knows, and your body's endocrine structures are responsive to the people in your life and what's going on. Another disruptor of this is sexual abuse. So you were put through the ringer on levels that you had no insight into or control over, and that were not respected by anybody around you or protected. And that's why, you know, this is intuitive to people who are sober and healed enough to raise kids conscientiously, that you would just never want, just like you would do anything to protect them from being publicly shamed or abused in any way, because you instinctively can feel about your kids that they are so fragile and that their sense of safety is so primally important. You can't protect kids from everything. Stuff happens, I know, and I bet your kids, I know my kids, you know, they've had to deal with some problems, and some of those problems were from me. You know, I had huge medical problems. I had a really fighting relationship with their dad, and you know, stuff happened that I regret very much that they were exposed to. But like all parents, I got to, you know, work on it and make good on it and provide that structure for them and be present in their life and see to their needs, you know, pretty well. You've heard that concept of good enough mother, so let's aim at that, okay? Good enough mother. So there was an older guy who looked like he could rescue you. I bet he did. Okay, he took advantage of me sexually and I lost my virginity. It sounds like you were quite young. Never saw him again. Then you say high school, so that sounds like it happened in middle school. That's way too young. I'm so sorry. You had no protection, nobody looking after you. High school, more bullying. At the age of 15, I fell pregnant and I had my daughter at 16. Especially given your home situation, I can only imagine how hard that was and what an incredible load of responsibility it was on you to try to deal with the bullying and the chaos of your mom. I assume you lived with her, but I don't even know that. You never saw the guy again, this older guy. But later you had your son, and that was a great experience because, yeah, you were more mature and prepared for it. And at the time, your daughter and you had moved in with your boyfriend, and you were supposed to get married. When you were pregnant, you took such great care of your body. So that's what I'm hearing. This came up a couple times. Like, a happy thing for you is when you take care of your body. And I'm not going to let you forget that. This is something you feel really good about. It puts you on your track. So that's one of the things that we're going to come back to and say, when you take care of your body, you feel good. You start to know the goodness of you and you become more capable. So it sounds like you have trouble caring for your body. And you didn't say why. I don't know what it is, whether it's food or, you know, weed or alcohol yourself. I don't know. But you wanted to give your baby a great start. And you wanted to do the best you could. So good. You had the baby and things started changing. You developed a colon issue. You said both my brothers-in-law died within a year of each other. And you told your boyfriend at the time that I needed more from him. So you said you needed more from him, and he didn't come through. That part, okay, it sounds like it was sort of like a shaky situation. And, you know, when you have a baby, you really do need more from your partner, you do. And many of us have had to do without it, but you needed more. But here's where you tipped your hand, and this was interesting that it was sort of couched in there. I told him I needed more from him. You said, try to limit the drinking, since I didn't want my kids to be around that anymore. And he told you he couldn't give you what you wanted. And that's what started the ball rolling and us separating. So I'm just saying it here. I think you know this, but you didn't even ask him to stop drinking, although probably, I'm guessing that's the only thing that would have made a difference. You just said, could he limit it? And could he be there more for you? And it caused the relationship to break down. So because of what you went through, I hear you going, oh, look, I caused this. You know, I should have tolerated it or something. Look what I put us through. But you know, you didn't want your kids to go through that again, and they would have gone through that again. I don't know. It does. You're not saying that there was that level of abuse and extreme, you know, selfish neglect that your parents dumped on you. But growing up with alcoholism, it's really hard. And so I see your vision that you were going to try to do something better, and doing it on your own sometimes is better than doing it with an alcoholic who's not there for you. So I can see why you made that choice, and I can also understand your question about maybe you were just, I don't know, avoidant or something. Because I'll tell you what, I'll tell you what, my brothers and sisters, when you were treated like this, it is hard to connect with somebody and form a stable relationship. A few people get right into it. The rest of us have to grow a little bit into it. All right, so you're growing and that can come, but you were young and you had 2 little kids. Oh my God, the pressure, I know. So I got divorced from my first marriage when my kids were 1 and 4. But I was 40 years old, you know, like I knew a lot and I was able to earn enough money, enough to get by. And, but that was still that was a shocking and devastating abandonment and very hard to deal with, even though it was totally the right thing and allowed me to put my life together in a much better way over time, okay? I want to put that out there for you. You can do it too. All right. So you sold everything, went separate ways, and there were fights, courts, custody, maintenance, and threats. There's so much more. Yeah, you don't want to trigger people. That's so thoughtful. I can imagine, though. And you lost everything. So you had no material things, and you had to move back home. Home! Oh my gosh. You had to move back home, and you've been trying for 7 years to get back on your feet. You said, my throat closes up every time I want to put myself first. So, you know, that's a very telling symptom that your throat closes. That sounds like a real physicalization of being silenced anytime you expressed your needs. I'm not very magical woo-woo about this stuff, but if your throat closes, that is a somaticization of feeling that you can't express yourself every time you try to put yourself first. Well, of course you have to put yourself first. You're the mom. One thing good about kids is that sometimes things that you would not do on your own behalf, you see that it must be done for their sake. Now, sometimes people are too far gone, they can't do it for the kids, but you can, Jennifer, you can. You can put yourself first and the well-being of your kids. You can put it all first. 7 years. So here's the thing. You're not the first person who ended up moving home with the parents who abused them, and every time it happens, my heart just bleeds for people because it is so devastating to recovery. I totally get that you're in a situation that you cannot get on your feet right now. And what you're describing, I know you've been to therapy on and off, and they may have told you, but it sounds to me like depression, and I don't blame you at all, that you have depression, you're having trouble, you can't move, you have thoughts about being useless, you've decided that you deserve to be punished for all the harm you've caused. I don't know what you've caused. That's where I started. I don't know what you've caused. You're on antidepressants, you're trying to eat healthy and function as a parent and a woman, failing miserably. No, you know what? You are an example to us all of a person who works to hang in there and raise the kids well and get a roof over their head and do what she needs to do to protect herself and her kids despite everything that happened to her, okay? So I'm just going to remind you that I want you to do everything you can to keep shifting your identity off of your mother's idea of you to the idea that me and everybody in this community, and I hope everybody's going to pour love at you. I know they will. They're going to let you know how good you are and how deserving and worthy you are, and help remind you that that's who you really are. You were never this idea of your mother's. You're a precious child, born innocent, who survived a very tough situation. So you have dark thoughts. So in my approach to healing, what those dark thoughts are, that I'm worthless, I'm useless, I should never have left my ex. We call those fears. So twice a day, for 28 years now, I write my fears and resentments on paper. There's a free course. It takes less than an hour to learn and try my techniques. I started doing these 28 years ago, and so quickly did they start to lift the burden of the terrible thoughts I was in, and the depression and the PTSD symptoms. You know, if you have CPTSD, and you must, right? It is so hard to get your thoughts in a line, you know, to sit there and get a to-do list and then take systematic action on things. But guess what? If you can learn to re-regulate, because what happens is neurological dysregulation. That's what happens when you're neglected and abused. It's really normal. You sound like you have what I have. You know, you're this creative, charming girl, and it gets really hard to put one foot in front of the other. You lose your train of thought, you start something, you can't finish it, something upsets you and just everything blows out for a few days, you can't do anything, you can't get up. You have what I have, okay? And there is hope. You can heal these symptoms, you can learn to re-regulate. There's a number of things you can do. And the most powerful one for me, and that this whole channel exists for me to share, is what I call the daily practice. Fears and resentments go on paper. It's a written process, and then resting and meditation. Now you might say, I have kids, I can't do that. I did it with kids. It's totally worth it. And I've said it on this channel before. I got up earlier than them so that I could write and meditate in the morning, even though I was tired and I needed sleep. Writing and meditating would give me mind rest and energy that I wouldn't have had if I didn't get up early and write and meditate. Then, in my evening writing and meditation, I don't know how old your kids are now. I think they're older than mine were. But I would put them in their high chairs. I'd put on SpongeBob. Do you know I've never even watched SpongeBob? I hear it's very funny. My kids loved it. So I'd let them watch an episode of SpongeBob for half an hour while I wrote and meditated. And they were, 1 and 4. And even the 4-year-old had to go in a high chair so he couldn't leave the room. And I would sit in the room and meditate. You can write and meditate even with SpongeBob on. And they would get to have a little snack that wasn't choky and watch SpongeBob. Now some people would be like, oh, I would never let my kids watch TV. It's like, well, you weren't in my shoes. I let my kids watch TV, and I used it as a babysitter so that I could take care of my mental health, and I was able to climb up out of this. When I was first divorced, I didn't have nearly enough money to get by, but using my daily practice, I was able to see a better idea, and I was able to get that mental clutter out of my mind and that inner discouragement out of my mind for enough hours of the day to go, okay, you know what I need to do? I need to make some cold calls, and I need to, I started consulting. I just knew there was no job that would pay me enough to be able to support my kids and me. So I was like, I need to consult and charge twice as much. And I basically created this, and it worked because I just did the things. But I never was able to take sustained action like that because of the dysregulation. I've always been intelligent. I can tell you are by your writing. I've been intelligent and capable and can do really good work. But dysregulated, I just can't even go get a job, So the daily practice, the link is down below. It's on my free tools page on my website, crappychildhoodfairy.com, free tools. I'll also put the link down below for anybody who needs some help getting this crazy, hamster thinking thing. Just calm down for a while. It comes back. We're not trying to get rid of all of our thoughts or defenses or reactions. It's just a very healthy place where you can funnel out all those dark thoughts without having to always talk to somebody. I get it, you can't afford a therapist. But even if you could, you can't always wait for some appointment on Tuesday for what's happening on Friday, right? You need a way to feel better today. You need to feel a way to feel better at any time, sitting in the car, sitting in the bathroom, hiding, whatever it is, waiting for an appointment. You can always just sit there and use these techniques and kind of bring yourself back from that bad place. And so you don't have to change anything else about yourself. If you use these techniques, just start using them. This problem of not being able to get up, it can begin to shift. You can see. So you might sit there and be writing, I'm resentful at myself because I have fear I can't get up out of bed, and fear I'm going to ruin all my opportunities, and fear I'm not going to be able to pay the rent, and all those fears go on paper. It's not going to pay the rent for you, but what it's going to do is start bringing that fear down so that a clear thought of how to take action will go forward. So I think you probably have all the common sense suggestions for what a single mom can do to get back on her feet again and get an apartment. It's really hard when you're depressed and dysregulated. All right? It's really hard. But you can heal the fundamental symptoms that's driving that depression. That's the dysregulation is that core symptom. And when you start learning to stay regulated and be regulated more of the day, you can start to see what to do about problems. You can also avoid problems before you get into them. Wouldn't that be nice? Can't go back in time, but going forward, you can begin to this is so much what CPTSD is like. You just don't have good sensors for wait, is this a good idea? Should I work here? Should I take a day off from work to do this thing that I'd like to do? Or will that cause me to lose my job? Neurologically, we're very bad at that. That's a measurable phenomenon. We can't predict, non-traumatized people, what the consequences of certain things are. There's so many things going on in the brain when we're triggered like that. So of course you have that, but as you calm it down, your good sense starts to get bigger than your dysregulation, and you can start to make the choices that just keep putting the best interest of you and your kids in front, in front, in front. And next thing you know, you've walked a great distance and things get better. I'm here to tell you things can get much, much better. So what I'm talking about is good for anybody who feels paralyzed with depression, overwhelmed with the bad thoughts. Everybody, if it gets so bad that you feel like you got to hurt yourself or, run away from your kids, please just get the professional help, because it's there. It's so good at that, right? To just get you through those. But in this hour, in this day, when you need help, I've got the technique that just might help you. Anybody who takes this free course or any of my courses, you get invited to, I do free Zoom calls with anybody who wants to come, who knows the techniques. So you take the little course, you get an email from me, we do Zoom calls and we all do it together, and I take questions. And so if anybody actually wants to talk to me, that's the place to do it. The other day, I stayed on for 3 hours. I just, when I can, I so enjoy connecting with people and talking one-on-one and helping people adopt these techniques. I want everybody in the world who could possibly benefit from them to recover as I did. And it doesn't cancel out anything else that you're doing that works for you. It can support whatever else you're doing that works for you. But I just think so many people simply don't have the money to do much else. So if you can do daily practice, you're taking care of your nutrition, and the next thing would be getting some exercise. So as a single mom, I had some little bikes for my kids. I had a bike for the big kid and a baby seat on my bike. And I would take the bikes out and we would go get a sandwich at Subway. And I could feed all three of us for like $12. And by now it's like some years later, so it'd probably be, $16 to ride our bikes. And used bikes, used baby seat, the whole thing. I did not have money and I grew up poor, so I know what that's like. But at the time, I remember feeling lonely and like, I have to take care of my kids all by myself. But I look back and those were very happy times when I was learning to care for myself and the kids in a good way with what I had. So I just send you all my blessings. If I could hug you, I would. I'm rooting for you, and I hope the community, please encourage this woman. She needs your encouragement right now. And she's not broken. You are not broken, Jennifer. You're not broken. You're injured. PTSD, complex PTSD, is an injury, but it's not who you are. It's an injury just like if somebody went to combat and lost a leg. Many of our friends have, lost a leg or an arm, had a serious injury. It's an injury, but it's not who they are. It's not who they are. They are still them. You are still you. So we're here, and I would love it if you came to one of my daily practice calls and said hello and introduced yourself as Jennifer, because of course it's not your real name. But I'd love to say hi to you and welcome you, and all of you watching too. If you're interested in how negative, hateful, bullying comments affect people, I have a video about how it has once affected me, and it's called Don't Let Mean People Wreck Your Focus, and that's right here. And I will see you very soon.